Far from busy trails and marked paths, sudden chaos can erupt. Tents torn apart, rivers turned into traps, and cabins no stronger than paper against relentless force. Predators strike without warning, and sometimes even prey becomes the attacker, shifting the line between hunter and hunted. From a Kodiak bear tearing through an Alaskan camp in August 2025 to a raging buck in Wisconsin's thickets in October 2024, these accounts reveal how quickly the wild can turn. In this video, we'll uncover 6 chilling encounters that ended in terror and survival. The remote wilderness of Kodiak Island, Alaska, had always been unforgiving territory. Located roughly 250 miles southwest of Anchorage, this massive landmass spanning over 3,500 square miles was home to the largest brown bears on Earth. The island's dense spruce forests, salmon-rich rivers, and rugged coastline had supported these apex predators for thousands of years. By August 2025, wildlife officials estimated nearly 3,000 Kodiak bears roamed the island, with adult males weighing up to 1,500 pounds during peak salmon season. 3 experienced hunters had arrived on the island's southeastern coast in early August, planning a week-long elk hunting expedition along the Kodiak River system. Kalen Thorne, a 45-year-old contractor from Fairbanks, had been hunting Alaska's wilderness for over 2 decades. His companions, Saphira Blackwood, a 38-year-old wildlife photographer turned hunting guide, and Bjorn Eriksson, a 52-year-old former Marine from Anchorage, brought decades of combined outdoor experience to their carefully planned expedition. The trio had established their base camp on August 3rd near a bend in the river where fresh elk tracks crisscrossed muddy banks. Their campsite sat in a small clearing surrounded by towering Sitka spruce trees, approximately 15 miles from the nearest ranger station. They had followed proper food storage protocols, hanging provisions in bear-proof containers 12 feet high and 200 yards from their sleeping area. Their gear included high-powered rifles, emergency flares, and satellite communication devices. Kalen's black German Shepherd, Fenrir, accompanied the group as both companion and early warning system. The intelligent dog had proven invaluable on previous hunting trips, alerting his owner to approaching wildlife long before human senses detected danger. Fenrir possessed an uncanny ability to distinguish between harmless forest sounds and genuine threats, making him an essential member of their hunting party. On August 4th, the hunters encountered troubling signs during their morning reconnaissance. Fresh bear tracks measuring nearly 12 inches long with claw marks extending 4 inches beyond the toe pads marked several trees around their camp perimeter. Saphira, with her extensive wildlife knowledge, identified the prints as belonging to an exceptionally large male Kodiak bear, likely weighing over 1,200 pounds based on stride length and track depth. The hunters discussed relocating their camp but ultimately decided to remain vigilant while maintaining their position. They reinforced their food storage systems and established a rotating watch schedule throughout the night. Bjorn, drawing on his military training, suggested creating noisemakers from empty cans and fishing line to provide additional early warning around their perimeter. August 5th dawned foggy and unusually quiet. The typical morning chorus of birds seemed muted, and even the river's constant murmur appeared subdued. Fenrir displayed unusual restlessness throughout the early morning hours, pacing nervously around the camp and whimpering softly. The dog's behavior troubled Kalen, who had never seen his companion so agitated without apparent cause. Around midday, while the hunters prepared lunch, Fenrir suddenly bolted from the campsite, racing through the forest with desperate urgency. His panicked barking echoed through the trees as he disappeared into the dense undergrowth. The hunters called after him, but the dog's distress calls grew increasingly distant until they faded entirely. What happened next remained partially reconstructed from physical evidence, as no human witnesses survived to provide complete testimony. Wildlife forensic specialists later determined that a massive male Kodiak bear, estimated at nearly 1,400 pounds, approached the camp from the southwest around 2 p.m. The animal's tracks indicated it had been observing the site for several hours before attacking. The bear's initial assault appeared sudden and overwhelming. Tent fabric lay shredded across the clearing, with massive claw marks gouging the frozen ground in long, parallel scratches. Callan's body was discovered near the cooking area, where he had apparently attempted to reach his rifle. Deep puncture wounds on his torso and defensive injuries on his arm suggested he had fought desperately before succumbing. Saphira's remains were found approximately 30 yards from the main campsite, indicating she had attempted to flee toward the river. Her camera equipment lay scattered along her path, with several frames capturing blurred images of massive brown fur and gleaming teeth. The final photograph showed the bear's enormous head filling the frame, eyes fixed on the camera with predatory focus. Bjorn had managed to reach his rifle and fire at least 3 shots based on empty shell casings found near his position. However, the bear's assault proved too swift and powerful to stop. His body showed evidence of massive blunt force trauma, consistent with being struck by an animal weighing over half a ton, moving at considerable speed. The attack's aftermath painted a grim picture of nature's raw power unleashed. Backpacks hung from trees in tatters, their contents scattered across hundreds of square yards. Cooking equipment lay crushed and twisted, while deep gouges in nearby tree trunks showed where the bear had vented its aggression after the initial assault. 6 hours later, Fenrir arrived at the ranger station covered in mud and displaying obvious signs of extreme distress. The intelligent dog had somehow evaded the bear and traveled 15 miles through dense forest to seek help. Rangers immediately recognized the animal's distressed state and decided to follow him back through the wilderness. The German Shepherd led the rescue team directly to the devastated campsite, where the full horror of the attack became apparent. Fenrir circled the perimeter nervously, occasionally approaching his deceased owner's body before retreating with obvious grief. The dog's survival provided the only witness account of the tragedy, though his canine perspective could offer limited details about the actual attack sequence. Wildlife officials later tracked and destroyed the responsible bear, which showed no signs of disease or injury that might explain its aggressive behavior. The animal appeared to be a healthy adult male protecting territory during peak feeding season, when bears typically become more aggressive while preparing for winter hibernation. The August 5th massacre highlighted the inherent dangers of wilderness hunting in apex predator territory, even for experienced outdoors enthusiasts with proper equipment and precautions. The San Juan Mountains of southwestern Colorado had witnessed countless hunting expeditions since the late 1800s, when miners first carved trails through the rugged peaks in search of silver and gold. By 2018, this wilderness area encompassed over 1.8 million acres of pristine forest, alpine meadows, and rocky precipices rising above 14,000 feet. The region supported healthy populations of elk, mule deer, black bears, and mountain lions, making it a premier destination for hunters seeking challenging terrain and trophy animals. Kieran Ashworth, a 34-year-old mechanical engineer from Denver, had been planning this solo mule deer hunt for months. An experienced outdoorsman with over 15 years of hunting experience, Kieran preferred the solitude and challenge of hunting alone in remote areas. He carried a reliable .270 Winchester rifle, chosen specifically for its accuracy at long range in mountainous terrain, along with emergency supplies and GPS navigation equipment. On October 12, 2018, Kieran established a temporary camp at 10,500 feet elevation near a series of natural game trails that cross between feeding areas. Fresh deer sign indicated active movement through the area with numerous tracks and droppings suggesting a resident population. The location offered excellent visibility across several draws and ridges where mule deer typically traveled during early morning and late evening hours. Weather reports had predicted clear conditions, but mountain weather proved notoriously unpredictable. Around dawn on October the 13th, an unexpected fog bank rolled through the high country, reducing visibility to mere yards. The thick moisture hung heavy in the air, muffling sounds and creating an eerie, disorienting atmosphere among the pine and aspen trees. Despite the challenging conditions, Kieran decided to continue his hunt, reasoning that deer might move more freely under the cover of the fog. He positioned himself on a narrow ledge overlooking a known game trail, hoping to intercept animals moving between bedding and feeding areas. The .270 rifle rested across his knees as he strained to peer through the dense mist. Around 7:30 a.m., Kieran detected movement approximately 30 feet above his position. Through the swirling fog, he initially mistook the tawny shape for a deer, but closer observation revealed the unmistakable profile of a mountain lion. The adult female, weighing roughly 120 pounds, crouched motionless on a rocky outcropping, muscles coiled and ready to strike. The cat had clearly been stalking him for some time, using the fog as perfect cover to approach within striking distance. Her amber eyes remained fixed on Kieran with predatory intensity, tail twitching slightly as she calculated the distance and angle for an attack. The hunter realized with growing horror that he had become the hunted in this deadly game of survival. Kieran attempted to slowly raise his rifle without triggering an immediate assault, but the mountain lion interpreted any movement as aggression. She launched herself from the ledge with fluid grace, covering the distance in a single, powerful bound. The impact knocked Kieran sideways, causing him to lose his footing on the narrow ledge and tumble several feet down the rocky slope. His ankle twisted painfully during the fall, sending sharp jolts of pain up his leg. The rifle clattered away into the fog, leaving him defensively armed only with a hunting knife. The mountain lion landed gracefully nearby, circling him with predatory patience while he struggled to regain his footing on the unstable scree. The cat made several testing attacks, swiping at him with razor-sharp claws that barely missed vital areas. One swipe caught his backpack, shredding the fabric and scattering contents across the rocky terrain. Kieran managed to grab a substantial piece of deadfall, using the branch to keep the aggressive feline at bay while he slowly backed toward more stable ground. For what felt like hours but probably lasted only minutes, hunter and predator engaged in a deadly standoff. The mountain lion continued circling, occasionally feinting attacks to test his defenses, while Kieran defended himself with desperate swings of his makeshift weapon. His injured ankle throbbed with each movement, threatening to collapse under his weight. The fog began lifting slightly around 8 a.m., providing better visibility, but also revealing how precarious his position remained. The mountain lion seemed to sense the changing conditions and made one final, determined assault. Kieran managed to strike her shoulder with his branch, causing her to retreat several paces with an angry snarl. Taking advantage of this momentary reprieve, Kieran began a careful retreat down the mountainside, keeping his back to a large boulder while maintaining visual contact with the predator. The mountain lion followed for approximately 50 yards before apparently losing interest and melting back into the dissipating mist like a golden ghost. Kieran eventually reached his camp where he treated his injured ankle and gathered his essential gear. The encounter had lasted less than an hour, but it fundamentally changed his perspective on solo hunting in mountain lion territory. He realized that fog and steep terrain created perfect conditions for predator ambushes, turning experienced hunters into vulnerable prey within seconds. The incident reinforced the harsh reality that in wilderness settings, humans occupy a precarious position in the food chain, especially when environmental conditions favor apex predators over human advantages like technology and firearms. The remote wilderness of interior Alaska stretched endlessly in all directions from the small hunting cabin where Soren Blackthorne had established his base camp in late August 2019. Located approximately 180 miles northwest of Fairbanks, this particular region remained largely untouched by human development, supporting substantial populations of moose, caribou, wolves, and grizzly bears. The area's reputation for producing trophy-class moose had attracted serious hunters for decades, despite the inherent dangers of pursuing North America's largest deer species in prime grizzly habitat. Soren, a 41-year-old petroleum engineer from Houston, Texas, had saved for 3 years to afford this premium guided hunt. However, his guide had been forced to cancel at the last minute due to a family emergency, leaving Soren to pursue his hunt solo. Rather than forfeit his substantial investment, the experienced hunter decided to proceed independently, reasoning that his 20 years of hunting experience across multiple states had prepared him for Alaska's challenges. The cabin he had rented sat on the shores of a pristine lake surrounded by dense stands of white spruce and paper birch. Built in the 1980s by a local outfitter, the structure featured log walls, a metal roof, and basic amenities including a wood-burning stove, propane refrigerator, and sleeping quarters for 4 people. The cabin's isolation appealed to hunters seeking authentic wilderness experiences, though it also meant the nearest help remained hours away by bush plane. Soren arrived on August 28, 2019, carrying his trusted point .338 Winchester Magnum rifle, along with sufficient supplies for a week-long hunt. The powerful cartridge had proven effective on large game across North America, and he felt confident in his ability to make clean kills on trophy moose at reasonable distances. His hunting strategy involved glassing open areas during early morning and evening hours when moose typically move between feeding and bedding areas. The first 3 days passed uneventfully, with Soren observing several cow moose and younger bulls, but no trophy-class animals worthy of his expensive tag. He established a routine of rising before dawn, hunting until mid-morning, resting during the heat of the day, and resuming his hunt during the evening hours. The cabin provided comfortable shelter and secure storage for his gear and food supplies. On the evening of August 31st, Soren noticed fresh bear sign around the cabin's perimeter. Large paw prints in the soft earth near the lake shore measured over 11 inches in length, indicating a mature grizzly of substantial size. Claw marks on several nearby trees showed where the animal had marked its territory, gouging deep furrows in the bark up to 8 feet above ground level. Despite these warning signs, Soren felt secure inside the solid log cabin. He had encountered bears during previous hunts and understood basic safety protocols, including proper food storage and waste disposal. The cabin's heavy wooden door and small windows seemed to provide adequate protection from curious wildlife, though he kept his rifle loaded and within easy reach as a precaution. Around 2 a.m. on September 1st, Soren awoke to the sound of heavy footsteps circling the cabin. Through the small window, he glimpsed the massive silhouette of a grizzly bear investigating the structure's exterior. The animal appeared enormous even in the dim moonlight, easily weighing over 1,400 pounds based on its bulk and the deep impressions its paws left in the soft ground. The bear spent several minutes examining the cabin's exterior, occasionally rising on its hind legs to peer through windows or test the strength of the walls with its powerful forepaws. Soren remained motionless in his bunk, hoping the animal would lose interest and wander away in search of easier food sources. Instead, the grizzly began focusing its attention on the cabin's main entrance. The door, secured with a simple sliding bolt, represented the structure's weakest point. The bear tested the door's resistance with increasing force, causing the entire cabin to shake with each impact. The sound of splintering wood suggested the barrier would not withstand much more abuse. Around 2:30 a.m., the door finally gave way with a tremendous crash. The massive grizzly squeezed through the doorframe, filling the cabin's main room with its imposing presence. In the confined space, the animal seemed even more enormous, its shoulder height reaching nearly 4 feet while standing on all fours. Soren grabbed his .338 rifle and attempted to position himself for a defensive shot, but the bear reacted with lightning speed to his movement. A powerful swipe from the grizzly's front paw sent him crashing into the cabin wall with tremendous force. The impact crushed his left shoulder and sent the rifle spinning across the room, well beyond his reach. The injured hunter found himself trapped in the corner while the massive predator explored the cabin's interior. The bear methodically destroyed furniture, scattered personal belongings, and consumed any food items it could locate. Soren remained motionless, hoping to avoid further provoking the animal while his shoulder throbbed with intense pain. For nearly 2 hours, the grizzly occupied the cabin, occasionally glancing at the injured human but showing more interest in ransacking supplies. The bear consumed several days' worth of food, destroyed camping equipment, and left massive claw marks on walls and furniture. Throughout the ordeal, Soren remained conscious but helpless to defend himself. Around 4:30 a.m., the grizzly finally departed, dragging a large bag of dried food through the destroyed doorway. The animal paused briefly to look back at Soren before disappearing into the pre-dawn darkness, leaving the cabin in shambles and its human occupant severely injured but alive. Soren managed to activate his satellite emergency beacon shortly after the bear's departure, initiating a rescue that would take nearly 6 hours to complete. His experience demonstrated that even substantial man-made structures offer limited protection when apex predators decide to investigate potential food sources, particularly during the critical pre-hibernation feeding period when bears become increasingly aggressive and desperate. The Atchafalaya Basin of south-central Louisiana represented one of America's last great river swamps, encompassing over 860,000 acres of wetlands, cypress forests, and maze-like waterways. By November 2017, this vast wilderness supported thriving populations of alligators, black bears, white-tailed deer, and an estimated 500,000 feral hogs. These European wild boar descendants had established themselves as apex predators in the swamp ecosystem, with mature sows reaching weights exceeding 400 pounds and developing aggressive protective instincts around their offspring. 3 experienced hunters had planned their expedition specifically to target the basin's notorious wild hogs, which caused extensive agricultural damage across Louisiana and posed significant threats to native wildlife populations. Thorin Grimwald, a 39-year-old sugar plantation manager from Baton Rouge, had organized the hunt with his longtime companions, Magnus Ironwood, a 44-year-old offshore drilling supervisor, and Elias Stormwind, a 36-year-old commercial fisherman from Morgan City. The trio possessed decades of combined hunting experience in Louisiana's challenging wetland environments. They understood the unique dangers posed by unstable terrain, venomous snakes, alligators, and aggressive feral hogs. Their equipment included high-powered rifles, backup pistols, GPS units, emergency flares, and specialized swamp boots designed for traversing muddy, waterlogged ground. On November 23, 2017, the hunters entered the basin via airboat, penetrating deep into roadless areas where large boar populations thrived undisturbed. Their guide, a local Cajun with 40 years of swamp experience, dropped them at a predetermined location with plans to retrieve them 3 days later. The remote area featured numerous hog trails, wallows, and rooting sites, indicating heavy use by substantial numbers of feral swine. The hunters established a temporary camp on slightly elevated ground surrounded by cypress trees draped in Spanish moss. The location provided access to several game trails while offering some protection from the elements. Fresh signs indicated recent boar activity throughout the area, with muddy tracks, overturned vegetation, and strong, musky odors marking their territory. During their first day, the hunters observed numerous smaller hogs, but sought a trophy-class boar rumored to inhabit the deeper swamp areas. Local hunters had reported encounters with an enormous sow exceeding 450 pounds, accompanied by a large litter of piglets. Such animals represented both valuable trophies and significant dangers, as protective sow behavior made them extremely unpredictable and aggressive. On November 25th, the hunters decided to penetrate deeper into the swamp, following a well-used game trail that wound through dense palmetto undergrowth and knee-deep standing water. The terrain proved treacherous, with hidden sinkholes, submerged logs, and unstable mud, creating numerous hazards for unwary travelers. Around 11 a.m., approximately 2 miles from their base camp, the hunters encountered fresh sign indicating they were closing in on their quarry. Massive hoof prints in the soft mud, along with recently disturbed vegetation, suggested a large sounder had passed through the area within the previous few hours. Thorin took point position, followed by Magnus and Elias, spaced approximately 20 yards apart. The formation allowed them to cover more ground while maintaining visual contact in the dense undergrowth. Their rifles remained ready for quick deployment, though the thick vegetation limited effective shooting ranges to less than 50 yards. The attack came without warning around 11:30 a.m. The massive sow and her 6 half-grown piglets erupted from a dense palmetto thicket, catching the hunters completely off guard. The protective mother, weighing nearly 500 pounds, immediately charged Thorin, while her offspring scattered in multiple directions, creating chaos and confusion. Thorin attempted to retreat, but immediately sank to his knees in a hidden mud hole, his specialized boots providing insufficient traction in the viscous muck. The enraged sow reached him before he could free himself, her razor-sharp tusk raking across his left arm and tearing through his heavy hunting jacket. Magnus tried to position himself for a clear shot, but struggled to maintain his footing on the unstable ground. His first shot went wide as his boots slipped in the treacherous mud, and the sow's attention immediately shifted to this new threat. She charged Magnus with surprising speed for such a massive animal, forcing him to scramble backward into deeper water. Elias found his right boot completely stuck in a concealed mud pit, trapping him in place while the chaos unfolded around him. He managed to fire twice at the charging sow, but missed both shots due to his precarious position and the animal's erratic movements through the dense undergrowth. For several terrifying minutes, the three hunters battled the enraged sow while struggling against the swamp's treacherous terrain. The animal's aggression seemed limitless as she defended her piglets, charging repeatedly despite minor wounds from the hunters' defensive knife strikes and improvised clubs fashioned from broken cypress branches. Magnus eventually managed to land a solid blow with a substantial piece of driftwood, stunning the sow long enough for the hunters to regroup. Thorin finally extracted himself from the mud pit, though his arm bled heavily from multiple lacerations. Elias freed his trapped boot by removing it entirely, leaving him with only one functional piece of footwear. The injured sow finally retreated with her offspring around noon, disappearing into the dense palmetto forest with angry grunts and squeals. The hunters found themselves bloodied, muddy, and exhausted from their ordeal, with Thorin requiring immediate medical attention for his arm wounds. The encounter demonstrated how swamp terrain could transform routine hunting situations into life-threatening emergencies. The unstable ground had prevented effective retreat, while limiting their ability to use firearms accurately, leaving them vulnerable to a determined predator's assault. Their experience highlighted the critical importance of understanding local environmental conditions when pursuing dangerous game, as terrain hazards could prove as deadly as the animals themselves in challenging ecosystems like Louisiana's vast swamplands. The Bitterroot Mountains of western Montana had witnessed human hunting activity for over 10,000 years, beginning with Native American tribes who pursued elk, deer, and bear along the region's pristine waterways. By September 2016, this rugged wilderness encompassed over 2 million acres of pristine forest, alpine meadows, and crystal-clear streams that supported healthy populations of elk, white-tailed deer, black bears, and mountain lions. The area's reputation for producing trophy elk attracted hunters from across North America, despite the inherent challenges posed by steep terrain, unpredictable weather, and abundant predator populations. Two lifelong hunting partners had planned their annual elk hunt along the upper reaches of the Bitterroot River system, where recent scouting reports indicated exceptional bull activity during the peak rutting season. Rowan Nightshade, a 43-year-old forestry consultant from Missoula, possessed over 25 years of hunting experience in Montana's backcountry. His partner, Victor Shadowmere, a 38-year-old emergency room physician from Billings, brought medical expertise along with 15 years of big game hunting experience. The hunters had selected their location based on aerial photographs showing natural elk travel corridors between high country feeding areas and lower elevation winter ranges. The specific drainage featured a series of beaver ponds and meadows where elk typically congregated during September's mating season, making it an ideal location for intercepting trophy-class bulls. Heavy rainfall during the previous week had swollen the normally manageable stream into a torrential river flowing at dangerous speeds. The chocolate brown water carried fallen trees, debris, and enough force to easily sweep away unwary humans or animals. Despite these challenging conditions, the hunters decided to proceed with their hunt, reasoning that elk would still need to cross at traditional fording points. On September 28, 2016, Rowan and Victor established a temporary camp approximately half a mile from the swollen river. Their elevated position provided excellent visibility across several natural meadows while keeping them upwind from areas where elk typically appeared during morning and evening feeding periods. Both hunters carried .3006 rifles loaded with premium ammunition specifically designed for clean kills on large game animal. Early morning reconnaissance on September 29th revealed fresh elk sign throughout the area, including rubs, wallows, and tracks indicating multiple bulls had passed through during the night. The hunters positioned themselves along the riverbank where game trails converge at a traditional crossing point, hoping to intercept animals moving between feeding and bedding areas. Around 8 a.m., while glassing the opposite bank for elk movement, Rowan noticed a substantial black bear fishing for salmon in the shallow areas downstream. The adult male, weighing approximately 450 pounds, appeared focused on the abundant fish run and seemed unaware of the hunter's presence roughly 200 yards upstream. The swollen river's roar masked most environmental sounds, creating ideal conditions for wildlife to approach undetected. Rowan crouched near the water's edge, using his binoculars to scan distant meadows for elk activity. The muddy riverbank provided unstable footing, made even more treacherous by the combination of wet clay and loose rocks deposited by the recent flooding. Without warning, the black bear emerged from the riverside willows approximately 30 feet from Rowan's position. The animal had apparently been tracking the scent of the hunter's breakfast preparations upstream and approached through dense cover to investigate potential food sources. Upon seeing the human, the bear immediately shifted into an aggressive posture, ears laid back and hackles raised. The bear's charge came with lightning speed across the slippery riverbank. Rowan attempted to retreat but lost his footing on the treacherous mud, tumbling backward into the frigid, fast-moving water. The icy current immediately grabbed him, pulling him downstream toward dangerous rapids and submerged obstacles. Victor, positioned roughly 50 yards upstream, heard the commotion and turned to see his partner disappearing into the churning brown water. He fired a hasty shot at the charging bear, grazing the animal's flank but failing to stop its aggressive advance. The wounded bear immediately turned its attention toward Victor, swiping with massive claws that tore through his heavy hunting jacket. The force of the bear's attack knocked Victor into the shallow water near the bank, where he struggled to maintain his footing against the powerful current. His rifle flew from his grasp, disappearing into the muddy water beyond recovery. The bear continued its assault, forcing Victor deeper into the dangerous river where swift water threatened to sweep him away. For several desperate minutes, Victor battled both the aggressive bear and the treacherous river current. The animal's repeated attacks drove him further from shore, where the water depth increased dramatically and underwater obstacles posed deadly threats. He managed to grab a partially submerged log, using it to keep his head above water while fending off the bear's continued aggression. The black bear finally retreated around 8:30 a.m., apparently satisfied that the immediate threat had been neutralized. Victor struggled against the current to reach the muddy riverbank, where he collapsed exhausted and hypothermic. His jacket hung in tatters, and multiple lacerations bled from the bear's claw marks. But he had survived the encounter. Downstream, Rowan had been swept nearly half a mile by the torrential current before becoming trapped against a massive log jam. The impact had rendered him unconscious, and the frigid water temperature accelerated the onset of severe hypothermia. Victor's desperate search efforts proved futile against the river's overwhelming force and debris-choked channels. Mountain rescue teams, alerted by Victor's emergency beacon, arrived approximately 4 hours later to find only one survivor. They recovered Rowan's torn gear lodged against rocks and fallen trees, but the river had claimed his body. The search continued for 3 additional days before being suspended due to dangerous water conditions. The tragedy demonstrated how multiple wilderness hazards could combine to create fatal situations, even for experienced outdoorsmen. The swollen river had provided perfect conditions for the bear's undetected approach while simultaneously eliminating escape routes and creating deadly obstacles for anyone forced into the water. Victor's survival served as a stark reminder that wilderness hunting required constant awareness of environmental conditions, predator behavior, and the cumulative effects of seemingly manageable individual hazards that could quickly escalate into life-threatening emergencies when combined. The hardwood forests of central Wisconsin had supported white-tailed deer populations for thousands of years, creating one of North America's premier hunting destinations by October 2015. This region's oak-hickory woodlands, interspersed with agricultural fields and dense thickets, provided ideal habitat for trophy-class bucks that could reach weights exceeding 300 pounds. During peak rutting season, mature males became increasingly aggressive and unpredictable as testosterone levels peaked and competition for breeding rights intensified. Elias Ravencroft, a 29-year-old insurance adjuster from Milwaukee, had been bow hunting white-tailed deer for over a decade. He preferred the challenge and intimacy of archery hunting, which required getting within 30 yards of his quarry while remaining completely undetected. His equipment included a high-end Hoyt compound bow capable of driving broadheads through heavy bone, along with a backup Ruger American .308 rifle slung across his shoulder for emergencies. The specific hunting area Elias had selected encompassed 2,400 acres of private farmland and adjacent forest, managed specifically for trophy deer production. Years of careful habitat management had created ideal conditions for growing mature bucks, with food plots, water sources, and undisturbed bedding areas strategically positioned throughout the property. During the final week of October 2015, trail cameras throughout the property had captured images of an exceptional 10-point buck, estimated to score over 170 inches under the Boone and Crockett measuring system. The massive deer displayed aggressive behavior toward other males and had established several scrapes and rubs throughout his territory, indicating he was actively seeking breeding opportunities. On October 28, 2015, perfect weather conditions combined with peak rutting activity to create ideal hunting opportunities. Elias positioned himself in a portable tree stand overlooking a natural funnel where several deer trails converge between bedding and feeding areas. The location offered excellent visibility while providing concealment from approaching deer. Around 4:30 p.m., as golden afternoon light filtered through the autumn foliage, Elias spotted movement in a dense thicket approximately 40 yards from his position. The massive 10-point buck emerged slowly, pausing frequently to scent check for danger while displaying the swollen neck and aggressive posture characteristic of dominant males during peak rut. The buck's impressive antler spread exceeded 24 inches with long tines and heavy mass, indicating a mature animal at least 6 years old. His estimated weight approached 280 pounds, making him a true trophy by any hunting standard. The deer's aggressive body language and constant vocalizations indicated he was actively seeking does while challenging any potential rivals. Elias carefully drew his compound bow, waiting for the perfect shot angle as the buck slowly approached his position. The deer moved with the confident swagger of a dominant animal unaccustomed to challenges, occasionally pawing the ground and thrashing nearby vegetation with his antlers to mark territory. At 30 yards, Elias released his carbon arrow, but the deer's sudden movement caused the broadhead to strike slightly behind the shoulder rather than achieving the desired heart-lung shot. The wounded buck immediately spun toward the source of the attack, his pain and adrenaline triggering an aggressive response rather than typical flight behavior. Instead of fleeing as most deer would, the enraged buck lowered his impressive antler rack and charged directly toward Elias's tree stand. The animal's testosterone-fueled aggression overcame normal survival instincts, transforming him into a dangerous adversary rather than a typical prey species. Elias barely had time to climb down from his elevated position before the massive deer reached the base of his tree. The buck's initial charge knocked him to the ground, sending his bow flying into the nearby undergrowth and leaving him defensively armed only with his hunting knife and the slung rifle he couldn't quickly access. The buck's 10-point antler rack swept across Elias's thigh, tearing through heavy hunting pants and opening deep lacerations in the underlying muscle tissue. The sharp tines functioned like organic daggers, capable of inflicting serious injuries or death if they struck vital areas during the animal's aggressive attacks. Elias rolled desperately to avoid the deer's slashing hooves, which hammered the ground with enough force to break bones or crush internal organs. Each impact sent dirt and debris flying while the massive buck continued his assault, driven by pain, adrenaline, and rutting aggression that eliminated normal fear responses. The hunter managed to grab a substantial oak branch that had fallen during recent storms, using the improvised weapon to keep the enraged deer's antlers away from his vital areas. The buck's superior size and strength made close combat extremely dangerous, but the branch provided enough reach to prevent fatal horn wounds. For nearly 10 minutes, hunter and hunted engaged in a deadly struggle among the fallen leaves and undergrowth. The wounded buck's stamina seemed limitless as he continued attacking, while Elias fought desperately to avoid being gored or trampled by the aggressive animal's hooves and antlers. Eventually, blood loss from the arrow wound began affecting the deer's coordination and aggressiveness. His attacks became less focused and powerful, allowing Elias to gradually maneuver toward where his rifle had fallen during the initial assault. The buck sensed this change in momentum and began backing away, though he maintained his aggressive posture. Around 5 p.m., as natural light began fading, the wounded buck finally retreated into the dense thicket where the encounter had begun. Elias retrieved his rifle and tracked the blood trail for approximately 200 yards before finding the deer had expired from the poorly placed arrow wound. The encounter taught Elias a valuable lesson about white-tailed deer behavior during peak rutting season. Mature bucks, driven by testosterone and breeding instincts, could react aggressively to perceived threats rather than displaying typical flight responses. This unpredictable behavior made close-range hunting extremely dangerous when shots failed to achieve immediate clean kills. His experience demonstrated that even seemingly harmless prey species could become formidable adversaries under specific circumstances, particularly when wounded animals possess the size, strength, and weaponry to inflict serious injuries on overconfident hunters who underestimated their quarry's potential for aggressive retaliation. The deep lacerations on Elias's thigh required immediate medical attention, forcing him to hike nearly 2 miles back to his vehicle while bleeding heavily. Emergency room physicians later commented that the wounds resembled those inflicted by a large predator rather than typical hunting accidents. The incident left permanent scars and served as a constant reminder of how quickly routine hunting situations could escalate into life-threatening encounters. Word of the aggressive buck encounter spread quickly among local hunting circles, fundamentally changing how experienced hunters approached wounded deer during rutting season. Many began carrying backup weapons and emergency medical supplies specifically for dealing with aggressive, wounded animals that refuse to follow predictable behavioral patterns during high-stress encounters,